Who the hell are you, and where do you think you're taking my mother? Ji-hoon Kang's roar cut through the blistering Texas heat like a blade, his voice low and lethal as he vaulted out of the blacked-out Tahoe, boots slamming onto the cracked, sun-scorched trail in Zilker Park. Jamie Russo froze mid-stride, sweat pouring down her face, the frail body of Mi-suk Kang draped across her shoulders in a desperate fireman's carry, the older woman's head lolling against Jamie's neck with shallow, ragged breaths. Jamie's arms trembled under the weight, her waitress uniform from the Barton Springs food truck soaked dark with sweat and streaked with dust, but she didn't lower Mi-suk an inch. Her hazel eyes snapped up to meet his, fierce, unafraid, blazing with something that looked a lot like fury. Ji-hoon's enforcers fanned out behind him, hands twitching toward concealed weapons, the tension thick enough to choke on. Jamie's chest heaved as she adjusted her grip on Mi-suk's legs, voice steady despite the strain. "I'm the one keeping her alive right now, that's who I am," she shot back, chin lifted in defiance. "Your fancy chair fried in this heat," she was collapsing and nobody else stopped. "So unless you're gonna help instead of threaten, get out of my way, because I'm getting her home." Ji-hoon stared, stunned silent for the first time in years, the sight of this stranger, this small sweat-drenched woman, carrying his paralyzed mother through hellfire like it was nothing hitting him harder than any rival's bullet ever could. And in that frozen heartbeat under the merciless Texas sun, with Mi-suk's faint whimpers the only sound between them, Ji-hoon realized whatever came next was going to change everything. Before we continue, I want to speak to you for a moment. If stories like this remind you that kindness still exists, if they make you feel something real in a world that's getting louder and colder, then I'd love to have you here with us. This channel isn't just videos, it's a tiny corner of the internet where good people come together. Where we believe in second chances, in hope, and in humanity. And right now you're early. You're part of the very first people building this family with me. So if you want to grow with us, if you want more stories that touch your heart, go ahead and subscribe. It's free, it supports the channel more than you know. And it tells me that there are still people out there who believe in kindness just as much as I do. If you have subscribed to this channel, I can officially say welcome to the family. The air in the South Congress warehouse hung thick and heavy, the kind of Austin summer heat that made even hardened men sweat through their suits. Ji-hoon Kang sat at the head of a scarred metal table, eyes locked on the three Silicon Valley hackers across from him. They were nervous, good. They should be. The Dragon Veil Syndicate didn't negotiate with people who thought they could skim crypto from his underground tech pipelines and walk away clean. His phone vibrated once. Then again more urgently. A red alert flashed across the screen. Mi-suk Kang, heart rate critical, location drifting from home. Ji-hoon was on his feet before the third vibration. "We're done," he said, voice flat and final. The lead hacker opened his mouth to protest, but one cold glance from Ji-hoon silenced him. His men knew the look. They moved like shadows, clearing the room as Ji-hoon strode out into the blinding midday sun. The drive to Zilker Park was a blur of screeching tires and red lights ignored. His armored Tahoe roared through the streets, cutting past food trucks and tourists until he spotted the trail near Barton Springs. And then he saw her. A black woman in a sweat-soaked food truck apron was carrying his mother. His frail, paralyzed mother, across her shoulders in a fireman's carry, trudging through the 110-degree heat like it was nothing. Mi-suk's head rested against the woman's neck, her breathing shallow and labored. 20 yards back, the high-tech electric wheelchair lay overturned, wheels still spinning uselessly, smoke curling from its melted battery casing. Ji-hoon slammed the Tahoe into park and vaulted out. "Who the hell are you, and where do you think you're taking my mother?" The woman stopped dead, turning slowly. Sweat poured down her face, her braids clinging to her cheeks, but her hazel eyes met his without a flicker of fear. She adjusted her grip on Mi-suk's legs, muscles straining under the weight. "I'm the one keeping her alive right now," she fired back, voice steady despite the exhaustion. "Your fancy chair shorted out." She was collapsing on the trail, turning blue. Nobody else stopped. "So unless you're here to help instead of growl, step aside, I'm getting her to shade and water." Ji-hoon stood frozen. His enforcers fanned out behind him, hands near weapons, waiting for a command. But no command came. He couldn't look away from this stranger, this waitress, who was carrying his mother through hell like it was her duty. He stepped forward, voice lower. "I'm her son. Let me take her." She studied him for a long beat, the dragon tattoo peeking above his collar, the tailored black shirt clinging to him in the heat, the unmistakable aura of danger. Then she nodded once, carefully transferring Mi-suk into his arms. The older woman whimpered softly, her hand clutching weakly at Ji-hoon's shirt. "Easy, Amma," he murmured in Korean, cradling her like glass. "I've got you." The woman, Jamie Russo, her name tag read, wiped sweat from her brow. "There's a bench under the oaks just ahead. She needs water and cool air fast." Ji-hoon carried his mother to the Tahoe, Jamie walking beside him without being asked. His driver jumped out to open the door, and they eased Mi-suk into the air-conditioned back seat. Jamie climbed in after her, immediately checking her pulse and fanning her with a folded menu from her apron pocket. Ji-hoon slid in on the other side, watching Jamie work with quiet efficiency. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "Yeah, I did," Jamie replied without looking up. "I'm a mom too. I know what it's like to need someone to step up when the world doesn't." The Tahoe sped toward Mi-suk's upscale ranch home in the hill country, AC blasting. As they drove, Jamie pulled out her phone and a small multi-tool from her pocket. She leaned down to examine the melted wheelchair port someone had loaded into the trunk. "This wasn't just heat," she said quietly, fingers tracing the circuitry. "The firmware was vulnerable. Someone pushed a remote overload. This was deliberate." Ji-hoon's blood turned to ice. "You're telling me her chair was hacked?" "I'm telling you I've seen this kind of exploit before," Jamie said, meeting his eyes. "I fix gadgets on the side, phones, laptops, smart devices. People in the neighborhood bring me stuff they can't afford to take to the big shops. This wasn't an accident. She wasn't just a waitress. She was something far more dangerous, and far more useful." At the ranch, aides rushed out to help Mi-suk inside. Ji-hoon followed Jamie as she insisted on staying until his mother was stable. In the cool, quiet living room overlooking rolling hills, Jamie sat beside Mi-suk's bed, speaking softly. "Gwenchina Yamanim," she said gently in fluent Korean. "You're safe now. Just rest." Ji-hoon stopped in the doorway, stunned again. Jamie glanced up, catching his expression. "What?" "I watch a lot of K-dramas," she said with a small, tired smile. "And I took classes online. Figured if I'm gonna live in Texas, might as well learn from the best stories." Mi-suk's eyes fluttered open, a weak smile crossing her face as she squeezed Jamie's hand. Ji-hoon felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. He stepped closer. "You saved my mother's life today. Let me repay you. Dinner. Coffee. Whatever you want." Jamie looked at him for a long moment, studying his face like she was trying to see past the danger. "Coffee," she said finally. "Tomorrow. And only because I want to know why someone would try to hurt a sweet old lady like her." Ji-hoon nodded, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. As Jamie gathered her things to leave, he realized one thing with absolute certainty. This woman had just walked into his world carrying his mother on her back, and she had no idea she just changed everything. The next afternoon, Ji-hoon pulled up outside a colorful little cafe on East 6th Street, the kind of place with mismatched chairs, local art on the walls, and baristas who knew every regular's order by heart. He'd swapped his usual black tactical look for dark jeans and a simple gray button-down, still expensive, still dangerous, but trying to blend in. He wasn't sure why he cared so much what she thought. Jamie was already there, sitting at an outdoor table under a string of Edison bulbs, her braids pulled into a high bun, wearing a faded Longhorns tee and cut-off shorts. She looked relaxed, legs crossed, scrolling on her phone, until she spotted him. Her smile was small, cautious, but real. "You clean up nice for a guy who rolls with armed escorts," she said as he slid into the seat across from her. "I left them at home today," Ji-hoon replied, nodding toward the empty street. "Figured you'd appreciate the effort." She laughed, low, warm, genuine, and something in his chest loosened. They ordered iced coffees, hers with oat milk, his black, and talked like people who'd known each other longer than 24 hours. Jamie spoke about growing up in East Austin, about raising her 8-year-old daughter, Mary, alone after her ex bailed when the girl was a baby. Ji-hoon listened more than he spoke at first, then let pieces of his own story slip. His father gunned down in a Laredo warehouse over a botched tech smuggling deal, the way he'd taken the throne at 25 hard and fast because weakness got you buried. "I built something unbreakable," he said quietly, staring into his coffee. "But sometimes I wonder what it cost." Jamie didn't flinch from the darkness in his voice. She just looked at him, really looked, and said, "Maybe it's not too late to build something else." That night, he wired the first chunk of syndicate money into a legitimate app startup he'd been quietly planning, a platform for underserved communities to access tech repair and training. It felt like a start. But rivals notice weakness the way sharks smell blood. 2 days later, Jamie texted him a screenshot. Strange traffic pinging the wheelchair's firmware logs from an unknown server. We should look deeper, she wrote. Tonight. He showed up at her modest apartment in East Austin just after Mary had gone to bed. The place was small but warm. Bookshelves stuffed with everything from coding manuals to children's stories, a gaming laptop glowing on the kitchen table, photos of a bright-eyed little girl with Jamie's smile covering the fridge. Jamie had already pulled up the wheelchair's remote diagnostics. Lines of code scrolled across the screen as her fingers flew over the keyboard. It's definitely an inside job, she muttered. Someone with access to your network pushed the overload command. Look at the timestamp. Matches when your mom left the house. Jihoon leaned closer, watching her work. She was fast, precise, confident in a way that made the room feel smaller. You do this a lot? He asked. Fix things people can't afford to replace? Yeah. She didn't look up. Started when neighbors kept bringing me broken phones. Turned out I'm good at it. They traced the signal to an encrypted node, then deeper into old syndicate server logs Jihoon hadn't touched in years. Jamie paused, her face tightening as a file name flashed on screen. Operation Lotus, 2018. She clicked it open. Human trafficking routes. Names. Dates. Photos. One photo stopped her cold. A grainy image of a terrified 5-year-old girl being moved through a safe house in Houston. Jamie's hand went to her mouth. That's Mary, she whispered. Jihoon felt the floor drop out from under him. Jamie turned to him slowly, eyes shining with unshed tears and something harder. 5 years ago, I was volunteering with a church group that helped runaways and trafficking victims. I found her in a motel off I-10. She had no name on the manifest, just a number. I got her out. Adopted her. Raised her as mine. Jihoon couldn't breathe. That route, Operation Lotus, had been one of his father's last before he died. Jihoon had shut it down when he took over, or so he thought. But the records, his syndicate had been part of moving that little girl. I didn't know, he said, voice rough. I swear to you, Jamie, I shut that pipeline down the day I took control. I believe you, she said quietly. Because if I thought you'd known, she didn't finish the sentence. Silence stretched between them, heavy and aching. Then she closed the laptop. But now you do know. And you get to decide what kind of man you are when nobody's watching. The next night, they went to an outdoor music festival on Rainy Street. Supposed to be a break, a chance to breathe. Live bands, food trucks, strings of lights swaying in the warm breeze. Jihoon wore a baseball cap pulled low. Jamie laughed and danced like the weight of the world wasn't on her shoulders. But halfway through the headliner, Jihoon spotted them. 2 men in Houston cartel colors lingering too long near the bar, eyes tracking him. He grabbed Jamie's hand. We have to move. They slipped through the crowd, weaving toward the exit, but the men followed. Jihoon pulled her into a shadowed alley between 2 venues, heart pounding. Jamie, listen. I already know what you're going to say, she cut in, voice low and fierce. And yeah, I've been tipping the cops. Anonymous app. Burner phone. Small stuff, drug drops, illegal gambling dens. Things that hurt people. He stared at her, stunned. But I never touched your operations, she continued. Not once. Because from the moment you looked at me carrying your mom like I was doing something heroic instead of just human, I saw something in you. Something worth betting on. The cartel men rounded the corner. Jihoon stepped in front of her, hands sliding to the piece at his waist. Jamie's fingers closed over his wrist. Don't. Not tonight. Let's be smarter. For the first time in his life, Jihoon Kang let someone else lead the way out of the darkness. And as they disappeared into the Austin night, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't just falling for Jamie Russo. He was ready to burn his entire empire to the ground if that's what it took to keep her and Mary safe, and to become the man she already believed he could be. Weeks blurred into a rhythm Jihoon had never known. Mornings checking on the new app startup, afternoons funneling more syndicate cash into legitimate channels, evenings stealing time with Jamie and Mary. He delegated the day-to-day cyber runs to his lieutenants, telling himself it was temporary. The truth? He didn't miss the shadows as much as he thought he would. Jamie's idea took shape fast. A community tech repair hub called Fix East, tucked into a renovated storefront on East 12th Street. It wasn't charity, it was smart. Locals brought in cracked phones and old laptops. Jamie and a small team she was training fixed them for affordable rates, taught basic coding classes after school, and quietly flagged stolen devices to the police. Ji-hoon funded it anonymously at first, then openly when Jamie insisted on transparency. "You want clean money," she told him one night, curled against him on her couch while Mary slept down the hall. "Then let people see where it's coming from. Own the change." So he did. Their romance grew in the quiet spaces. Sunset walks along Lady Bird Lake, her hand in his as they watched the bats swirl under Congress Avenue Bridge. Late-night drives with the windows down, Texas country on the radio. Stolen kisses in the back of the repair hub after closing, tools scattered around them like metal confetti. For the first time in his adult life, Ji-hoon Kang felt something close to peace. Then Mi-suk collapsed. It happened on a mild October evening. Ji-hoon was at the ranch helping his mother with her physical therapy routine, when her legs began to spasm uncontrollably. Her face went pale, eyes rolling back, and she slumped forward in her chair. "Amma." Ji-hoon caught her before she hit the floor, panic clawing up his throat. He carried her to the car himself, barking orders at the aides as they sped toward Del Seaton Medical Center. Jamie met him in the ER waiting room. She'd been at the hub when he called. She didn't ask permission. She just took his hand and held it while doctors rushed Mi-suk into imaging. Hours later, a neurologist Ji-hoon had never met before pulled him into a private consultation room. Jamie stayed by his side. "We found something unusual," the doctor said carefully, pulling up scans on the screen. "There's an old neural implant, military-grade, highly experimental, embedded along your mother's spine. It's been suppressing nerve signals for years, but it's degrading, causing seizures, pain, paralysis." Ji-hoon stared at the glowing images, wires and nodes woven into his mother's spinal column like some kind of mechanical parasite. "This wasn't from a car accident," the doctor continued. "The scarring pattern is surgical. Someone implanted this deliberately." The room tilted. Ji-hoon's father had died in 2015, or so everyone believed, shot during a deal in Laredo. Before that, he'd been obsessed with protecting the family. He'd bragged about connections in biotech, black market enhancements for soldiers and spies. Ji-hoon had dismissed most of it as paranoia. He'd never imagined his father would test it on his own wife. "He did this to her," Ji-hoon said, voice hollow, "to keep her safe from his enemies, and told everyone it was an accident." Jamie's grip tightened on his arm. But the worst was yet to come. That night, while Mi-suk rested under observation, Ji-hoon's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from an unknown sender. A photo, the same spinal implant scan, time-stamped from the hospital. Below it text, "We know what your father built into her. We know how to turn it off, permanently. Back out of the East Side projects, or she becomes a vegetable by remote control." Attached was a video, grainy security footage of Jamie and Mary leaving the repair hub earlier that day, a red laser dot dancing across Mary's backpack for 3 full seconds. The Houston cartel wasn't just watching. They had the kill switch to the device keeping his mother alive, and they were willing to use it. Ji-hoon stood in the hospital corridor, rage and terror warring inside him, phone clenched so tight the screen cracked. Jamie stepped in front of him, eyes fierce. "You're not doing this alone anymore," she said quietly. "Whatever this is, we face it together." He looked down at her, the woman who'd carried his mother out of the heat, who'd seen the man beneath the monster, who'd given him a reason to want something better. Then he made the call he'd been avoiding for weeks. "Get me everything on my father's old biotech contacts," he told his most trusted lieutenant. "And pull the full schematics of that implant. We're ending this." For the first time, Ji-hoon Kang wasn't planning a war. He was planning a rescue. And this time, it was his mother's life, and the future he was building with Jamie and Mary, hanging in the balance. South by Southwest turned Austin into a fever dream. Thousands of people flooding the streets, music pulsing from every bar, tech demos lighting up the convention center like a digital carnival. For Ji-hoon and Jamie, it was the perfect cover. They'd spent weeks planning the sting. Jamie's cybersecurity skills had mapped the Houston cartel's entire digital footprint. Encrypted ledgers hidden in cloud servers, burner accounts routing money through fake festival vendor apps, even a backdoor into the neural implant controlling Mi-suk's spine. The cartel thought they held all the cards, the remote kill switch. They had no idea Ji-hoon was about to flip the table. The operation unfolded in layers. Jamie worked from a makeshift command center in a rented loft overlooking downtown, her screens glowing with code. She deployed a swarm of honeypot apps disguised as South by Southwest vendor payment portals, irresistible bait. As cartel techs logged in to siphon funds, Jamie mirrored their drives, downloading proof of everything. Trafficking routes, blackmail files, the implant override codes. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon attended the negotiation, in a sleek high-rise suite at the Fairmont, the Colorado River glittering below like a ribbon of molten gold in the sunset. The cartel's envoy, a polished man named Reyes, sat across the glass table flanked by two silent enforcers. "You're going soft, Kong," Reyes said with a shark smile. "Pulling out of the east side, starting charities. Word is you've got a woman making you weak." Ji-hoon leaned back, calm as steel. "I'm building something that lasts. You should try it." Reyes slid a tablet across the table. Live feed of Mi-suk in her hospital bed, vitals flatlining on command. "One press," he said softly, "and she's gone." Ji-hoon's blood roared in his ears, but he didn't flinch. His phone buzzed in his pocket, Jamie's signal. The trap was sprung. "Now," he said quietly into his sleeve mic. Across town, Jamie executed the final sequence. Every screen in the cartel's Austin safehouses lit up with their own files, ledgers, videos, the implant codes, streaming live to federal servers she'd anonymously tipped weeks ago. At the same moment, the high-rise suite's massive TV wall flickered to life with the same feed. Reyes stared, smile freezing. "You wanted my attention," Ji-hoon said, standing slowly. "You have it. And now the feds have yours." Reyes lunged for the tablet, but Ji-hoon's men were faster, disarming the enforcers in seconds. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Reyes spat curses in Spanish as security flooded the room. Ji-hoon didn't wait to watch the cuffs go on. He was already running, for the hospital, for Jamie, for the life he was finally ready to claim. 3 months later, on a perfect spring evening in the hill country, Ji-hoon married Jamie at a small vineyard outside Dripping Springs. Wildflowers carpeted the fields, fairy lights strung between ancient oaks. Only 20 people. Mi-suk in a wheelchair decorated with bluebonnets, Mary as flower girl, a handful of Ji-hoon's now former lieutenants who'd chosen the legit path. Jamie walked the aisle in a simple lace dress, eyes locked on Ji-hoon like he was the only man in the world. "I take you, Ji-hoon Kong," she said, voice steady, "to have and to hold in the chaos and the calm as my partner, my equal, my home." He could barely speak through the lump in his throat. "I take you, Jamie Russo, as my wife, my conscience, my future. I will spend every day earning the man you see in me." They kissed under a sky streaked with pink and gold, and for one perfect moment the past felt buried. But the past never stays buried quietly. 2 weeks after the honeymoon, a quiet cabin near Lake Travis, Ji-hoon's most trusted advisor, Min-jae, requested an urgent meeting at the new Fix East headquarters. Min-jae had been with him since the beginning. Calm, brilliant, the one person Ji-hoon had kept closest during the transition. They met in the back office after hours. Jamie was there too, running diagnostics on donated laptops for the next youth class. Min-jae closed the door, face unreadable. "There's something you need to see," he said, sliding a flash drive across the desk. Jamie plugged it in. Old security footage loaded, grainy, timestamped 15 years earlier. A deal gone wrong in Houston. Ji-hoon's father on one side, a younger rival on the other. Gunfire. A family caught in the crossfire. A mother and father killed. 2 children orphaned. The boy in the footage, barely 20, covered in blood as he cradled his dying parents, was unmistakable. "Min-jae." Jamie gasped. Ji-hoon went very still. "I've been waiting," Min-jae said quietly, voice raw for the first time in years. "Waiting for the right moment to destroy you the way your family destroyed mine." The room was silent except for the hum of computers. "But I watched you," Min-jae continued. "Watched you choose her. Choose Mary. Choose to dismantle everything your father built. And I realized, the man I came to kill doesn't exist anymore." He met Ji-hoon's eyes. "I'm done seeking revenge. If you'll have me, I want to help build what comes next. For real this time." Jamie reached for Ji-hoon's hand under the table, grounding him. Ji-hoon exhaled, a long, shaking breath, and extended his hand across the desk. Then welcome to the family, brother. Later that night, driving home under a canopy of stars, Jamie leaned her head on his shoulder. You kept your promise, she whispered. What promise? That you'd become the man I saw that day in the park. Ji-hoon kissed the top of her head, the weight of empires finally lifting. The Dragon Veil Syndicate was gone. In its place stood something stronger. Something real. And for the first time in his life, Ji-hoon Kang was free. 10 years slipped by like a slow Texas sunset. Austin had changed. Taller buildings, more electric cars humming along the streets, the green tech boom turning the city into a beacon for clean energy and innovation. At the heart of it stood the Kang Thompson Foundation, headquartered in a sunlit campus on the edge of East Austin. What started as Fix East had grown into a powerhouse. Scholarships sending hundreds of kids from underserved neighborhoods to top universities, anti-trafficking initiatives partnering with law enforcement across the state, solar-powered community hubs providing free tech training and safe spaces for at-risk youth. Ji-hoon and Jamie ran it side by side. He handled the big-picture strategy and fundraising. She led the programs, the one who still rolled up her sleeves to fix a kid's broken laptop or sit with a survivor late into the night. They were a team, unstoppable, inseparable. Mi-suk, now in her late 70s, lived with them on a quiet ranch outside the city. The upgraded neural implant, redesigned by ethical engineers Jamie had vetted herself, had not only restored full mobility but given her a second lease on life. She chased her granddaughter, Mary, now a sharp 18-year-old freshman at UT Austin studying computer science and criminal justice, around the yard teaching her Korean recipes and Texas tall tales in equal measure. Life wasn't perfect. There were still late nights worrying about funding shortfalls, teenagers who fell through cracks no program could catch. But it was good. It was honest. The annual foundation gala at the Texas State Capitol was the highlight of their year. Under the massive rotunda, beneath the starlit dome, politicians, donors, and former program kids mingled in tuxedos and gowns. Mary gave the keynote that night, speaking eloquently about growing up knowing she'd been saved twice. Once by Jamie's courage and again by the second chance the foundation gave families like hers. Ji-hoon stood at the edge of the crowd, watching his daughter command the room, pride swelling in his chest. Jamie slipped her arm through his. You did this, she whispered. We did this, he corrected. Later, as the string quartet played and champagne flowed, the foundation director approached with a tablet. We just received the largest single donation in our history, she said, eyes wide. Anonymous, wired from an offshore account. Enough to fund the new trafficking safe houses statewide and double the scholarship program for the next decade. Ji-hoon frowned. Any identifying details? Nothing. Just a note. For the family I couldn't protect the first time. Use it well. The words hit him like a ghost's breath. That night, back at the ranch, Ji-hoon sat alone in his study, staring at the encrypted message that had accompanied the transfer coordinates. Jamie found him there just before dawn. Talk to me, she said softly, settling beside him. He handed her the tablet. The message contained a single video file. He pressed play. The screen flickered to life. An older man, face lined with years and regret, sitting in what looked like a modest beach house somewhere tropical. Salt and pepper hair, the same sharp eyes Ji-hoon saw in the mirror every morning. His father. Ji-hoon's breath caught. Son, the man said, voice rough with emotion and a faint Texas drawl picked up from years in hiding. If you're watching this, it means you've built something I never could. Something clean. Something good. He leaned closer to the camera. I didn't die in Laredo. I staged it, paid off the right people, disappeared to keep the heat off you and your mother. I thought the empire was the only way to protect my family. I was wrong. I hurt the woman I loved most to save her. I left you to clean up my mess. A long pause. His eyes glistened. I've watched from a distance. Every scholarship awarded. Every safe house opened. Every time you chose mercy over power. You became the man I never had the courage to be. He smiled faintly. The money is clean. Investments I made outside the life, grown quietly over the years. Use it to keep building. Protect them the way I couldn't. The video ended. Ji-hoon sat frozen, tears tracking silently down his face for the first time since childhood. Jamie wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. He saw you, she whispered. All of it. Ji-hoon nodded, throat tight. Redemption runs in the family, he said finally, voice steady despite the tears. He just needed us to show him the way. Later that morning, as the sun rose over the hill country, Ji-hoon stood on the porch with Jamie, Mi-suk, and Mary, 3 generations linked by survival, by choice, by love. He thought back to that blistering day in Zilker Park. A stranger carrying his mother through fire, refusing to let her fall. One act of kindness. One moment when someone saw a human being worth saving. It had changed everything. Ji-hoon pulled Jamie close, breathing in the scent of wildflowers and possibility. In the Lone Star State, under an endless Texas sky, they had built a legacy not on fear or power, but on second chances. And that, Ji-hoon knew, was the greatest empire of all. What will you rate this story from 0 to 10? And what part of the world are you watching from? Comment your country below. Let's build a global community rooted in kindness and second chances. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends. Your support brings us closer to our 1K subscriber milestone, and inspires us to keep creating more emotional stories of resilience, healing, and Black excellence. Thank you for being part of our journey. Your presence matters more than you know. Hope to see you again.